I never imagined that my baby shower would be canceled behind my back, especially not by my mother. But that's exactly what happened. She didn't even have the decency to tell me directly. Instead, she manipulated the situation so that it was called off, all because my sister, Claire, was going through a divorce. It didn't seem fair. It wasn't just the baby shower I lost, but the respect I deserved as a grown woman and a future mother. To understand why this felt like such a betrayal, I need to start from the very beginning. I was adopted when I was just a baby. My biological mother abandoned me at a fire station right after I was born, and for a long time, I wondered what my life would have been like if my parents hadn't found me. They had tried for years to have a child of their own without success, and after many failed attempts, they decided to adopt. I was their miracle, and I was incredibly lucky to have been chosen by them. My adoptive mother, whom I always just called Mom, still tells me how she knew from the very first moment she saw me that I was meant to be her daughter. She says that love overwhelmed her in that instant, and I can see it in her eyes whenever she talks about it. My parents worked tirelessly to get me into their lives, jumping through every hoop they had to, filling out all the paperwork, attending interviews, and welcoming home visits, just to ensure they could provide a safe and loving environment for me. They did all of this to make sure I could have the family I deserved. I can't imagine my life without them. They didn't just give me a home, they gave me a second chance at life. They were my first family, and I've always been incredibly grateful for them. I was their first child, and for years, I was showered with their love and attention. Growing up as an only child had its perks, and for a long time, I thrived in that environment. I had all the love and care a child could wish for, but things weren't always perfect. My maternal grandparents were a different story. From the moment I entered their lives, they made it clear that they didn't want me. They never acknowledged me as part of the family, constantly telling my parents that adopting me was a mistake. They didn't even try to hide their disdain for me. As a child, I didn't fully understand why they treated me the way they did, but I felt their coldness every time I saw them. One of the most painful memories I have is from Christmas. Our family would gather at my grandparents' cabin for the holidays, exchanging gifts and celebrating the season together. It was a tradition, and it was the first time I was included in the celebration. Everyone received gifts, except for me. My grandparents flat out refused to give me anything. They told everyone that I wasn't really part of the family, so I didn't deserve a gift. I remember how hurt I felt, watching my cousins open their presents while I stood there empty-handed. My dad, who had always been protective of me, was furious. He confronted my grandparents and scolded them for treating me differently than my cousins. He made it clear that I was his daughter and part of their family. The argument turned into a full-blown fight, and my dad eventually refused to participate in the celebration. He left the cabin with me, despite my mother not wanting to leave yet. I remember feeling sick to my stomach, thinking that somehow I was responsible for the fight between my parents. My dad reassured me that none of it was my fault, that he loved me no matter what, but the guilt still lingered, and it only made it worse to know that my grandparents didn't love me, didn't accept me. Sadly, things didn't improve between us. Over the years, my dad made a conscious effort to distance himself from them. He refused to attend family events, and despite my mom's efforts to bridge the gap, he never forgave them for how they treated me. His side of the family, however, was completely different. They embraced me from the very start. They treated me like one of their own, never once making me feel like I wasn't family. I spent countless holidays and birthdays with my dad's side of the family, and even as an adult, we continue to stay close. We support each other through the good and the bad. But my relationship with my mom's side of the family remained strained. I continued to feel rejected and unwanted by my maternal grandparents. Despite that, I had my parents, and for years, that was all I needed. They loved me, and that was enough. Then, 7 years ago, something incredible happened. My mom, after years of trying and failing, found out she was pregnant with my little sister. I couldn't believe it at first. It was a miracle. My parents had been through so much to have a child of their own, and now They were going to have a biological child, while everyone around me celebrated. I felt a knot of jealousy and fear forming in my stomach. I had always been their only child, the one who received all their attention and affection. I feared that with a biological child on the way, I would somehow be pushed aside. It didn't help that I had already seen how my grandparents treated me. I feared that they would turn their back on me again, especially now that there was a real child in the family. Fortunately, my parents must have sensed my anxiety because they took the time to reassure me. They sat me down and told me that I would always be their first child, no matter what. My mom pointed out that now I would have a little sister to share my life with, which made me feel much better. I was excited to meet my sister, and when she was born, I remember feeling a sense of awe as I looked at her for the first time. She was perfect. Her tiny fingers, her bright eyes, it all felt like a dream. From the very beginning, Claire and I were incredibly close. She followed me everywhere, and I even caught her trying to mimic my every move. Of course, like any sisters, we had our squabbles, but I loved her too much to stay angry for long. However, things began to change as Claire grew older. Slowly, I began to notice that her behavior toward me was becoming colder. She had started acting distant and rude for no apparent reason. At first, my parents just thought it was a phase, but then, more strange things began happening. My clothes started mysteriously getting ruined. I would come home from school and find random holes in them, and when I asked Claire about it, she just shrugged it off. Then, my contact lenses disappeared. I had left them on the table, but when I came back, they were gone. My parents didn't believe me when I said I hadn't misplaced them, but the final straw came when I walked into my room one day and found Claire playing with my lipsticks on my dresser. The collection I had spent years collecting was completely destroyed. I couldn't believe my eyes. Claire was the last person I expected to be capable of something like this. But as I looked back on the strange incidents that had happened with my clothes and my contact lenses, the dots finally connected. I confronted Claire, demanding to know why she had been so destructive. At first, my mom couldn't believe it, but after a little pushing, Claire finally admitted the truth. She had been behind everything, from the ruined clothes to the stolen contact lenses. When I asked her why, her answer broke my heart. Claire told me that our grandparents had filled her head with negative ideas about me. They had told her that I wasn't really part of the family, and that I was trying to take away what was rightfully hers. They had made her jealous of me, and over time, that jealousy had turned into hatred. Hearing that made my blood boil. I had suffered in silence for so long, enduring my grandparents' cold treatment, and now they had manipulated my sister into turning against me. I didn't want to get my dad involved, but I knew that if I told him, he would never forgive them. My mom promised me she would handle it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. What came next shattered me. My mom had suggested, behind my back, that I cancel my baby shower because Claire was going through a divorce. I couldn't believe it. I was furious. My baby shower had nothing to do with Claire or her issues. I was the one who was pregnant, and I had worked hard to plan this special occasion for my baby. Yet, my mom thought it would be better to cancel it all because Claire was feeling miserable. I refused to back down, but little did I know, my mom had already made up her mind. The tension between my mom and me only escalated after that phone call. I was adamant that my baby shower would go on as planned, but I had no idea just how far my mom was willing to go to please Claire and protect her from any embarrassment. 2 days before the event, my mom called again, but this time she had some devastating news to share. Claire was getting divorced. I was blindsided. I had no idea that Claire's marriage was in trouble. From what I had seen, everything seemed fine. Claire and her husband, Cameron, always looked like a solid couple. Sure, they had their issues, but I never thought it was anything serious. And yet, here I was, hearing that Claire's husband had discovered her affair with a coworker, and it had all come crashing down. The confrontation was explosive, apparently. Cameron found out about the affair and, understandably, kicked her out of the house. Claire was left with nowhere to go, and that's when she moved back in with our parents. I could hardly believe it. Claire had always been a little bit rebellious, but I never imagined she'd be capable of doing something so reckless. My dad was furious with her. He was absolutely livid. He made it clear that if she couldn't honor the sanctity of marriage, then she deserved to be alone. He didn't mince words. But my mom, as usual, took a softer approach. She was convinced that Claire's marriage could be saved, that therapy could fix everything. But Cameron was done. He had made up his mind, and he was sticking with it. And here's where everything took a turn. My mom, trying to protect Claire from the fallout, suggested that it would be best to cancel my baby shower. She told me that since Claire was so upset about her divorce, it might be too painful for her to watch me celebrate the upcoming birth of my child. I couldn't believe it. I had already sent out invitations, made arrangements, and my dad's side of the family had worked hard to organize everything. My baby shower wasn't about Claire. It was about me and my baby, but my mom wouldn't hear it. She insisted that it would be too much for Claire, that it would make her feel even worse. I was furious, but I tried to stay calm. I told my mom that the world didn't revolve around Claire, that I had a right to celebrate my baby, regardless of her problems. I told her that if Claire didn't want to come, she didn't have to. But my baby shower would proceed as planned. It was non-negotiable. My mom didn't take it well. She kept arguing, trying to convince me that it would cause too much tension, that the family would feel uncomfortable. But I was resolute. This was my moment, and no one was going to take it from me. The conversation ended with me feeling completely drained. And I was honestly upset that I had to even have that discussion with her in the first place. I thought that would be the end of it. But when the day of the baby shower arrived, I realized how wrong I was. The morning of my baby shower, I was excited. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks. And even though the conversation with my mom left me feeling conflicted, I was determined to enjoy the day. I had arranged for one of my cousins to pick me up, since my mom and I hadn't really talked much after our last disagreement. But when I got up that morning, I was surprised to see my mom walking through the door. At first, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this was a sign that she had come around, that she was ready to show me the support I needed. Maybe she was finally going to back off from her ridiculous insistence that my baby shower had to be canceled. But when she spoke, my heart sank. She told me that she had decided to cancel the baby shower on my behalf. She said that because I refused to cancel it myself. She took it upon herself to do so. The reasoning: it wouldn't look good for our family to celebrate while Claire was going through such a difficult time. I was speechless. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother had made the decision to cancel the celebration I had been looking forward to for months, and she didn't even have the courtesy to discuss it with me first. She acted as though she was doing me a favor, as though she was protecting me from embarrassment. But all I could feel was betrayal. I was so angry I could barely think. How could she do this to me? How could she just take away my moment without even consulting me? I had already planned everything, sent out invitations, and now it was all for nothing. I tried to stay calm. I shut my eyes tightly, counting to 10 to try and regain my composure. When I opened my eyes, the hurt and disappointment were still there, but I had to do something. I told my mom, as firmly as I could, that she needed to leave my house immediately. I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her after what she had done. As soon as she left, I felt a mix of emotions flood through me. I was devastated, heartbroken, and furious. I couldn't understand how she could betray me like this. How could she cancel my baby shower without even considering my feelings? I felt lost. I wanted to scream, to vent all of my frustration. But I was pregnant. I couldn't let the stress take over. I didn't want to hurt my baby, but the pain was real. And it felt like my mother had just torn away everything I had been looking forward to. After she left, I reached out to Matt. He was my rock through all of this, always supportive, always understanding. I told him what had happened, and he was furious too. He couldn't believe that my mother would do something like this, especially when I was about to become a mother myself. In the end, I had to make the painful decision to go ahead without her. I was crushed, but I wasn't going to let her actions rob me of the joy of welcoming my baby into the world. This was my time, and no one, not even my own mother, was going to take that from me. After the devastating news that my baby shower was canceled, I felt completely broken. My heart ached, and the tears wouldn't stop. I was overwhelmed by the feeling of betrayal, not just from my mom, but also from Claire. It was like the world I had carefully built around me was crumbling, and I was powerless to stop it. I knew my mom had made the decision to cancel the baby shower because of Claire's situation, but it felt like more than that. It felt like my mom was choosing Claire over me once again. She had always treated Claire with more care, more understanding, more patience. And now, once again, it seemed like Claire's needs were more important than mine. To make things worse, Claire sent me a message later that day. The message was short, but it was enough to send my blood boiling. She told me I shouldn't be so sensitive about the situation, that I shouldn't be so hard on Mom. She even had the audacity to tell me that I should understand that Mom didn't want to have to answer questions about her divorce all day. What? Was I supposed to just accept that my life had to be put on hold because Claire was going through a divorce? Was I supposed to just let her ruin my joy? The message also asked me to keep Claire's affair with her boss a secret. She didn't want anyone in the family to know about what had really happened. She wanted to pretend that everything was fine. But how could I go along with that when she was the one who had destroyed her marriage, hurt our whole family, and still thought she could control everything? I didn't respond to her message. I was done. Done with the manipulation, done with the lies, and done with letting Claire and my mom walk all over me. But it didn't end there. My mom kept calling, over and over again, trying to convince me to understand, trying to make me see things from her perspective. She wanted me to see that Claire needed her, that this was a moment of crisis, and that my baby shower wasn't as important as Claire's emotional state. But I couldn't stand it anymore. I had already had enough. I finally picked up the phone and told her exactly how I felt. I told her how hurt I was, how she had crossed the line by canceling my baby shower without consulting me, how she had constantly favored Claire over me, even when Claire was wrong. I told her that I would never let her disrespect me like this again, and that if she continued to treat me the way she had, she would never meet my child. I couldn't have someone who treated me like that around my baby. My mom was taken aback. She wasn't used to me standing up for myself. I think she always saw me as her quiet, obedient daughter, the one who would go along with whatever she said. But not anymore. I wasn't that person anymore. And I was done letting my mom treat me like an afterthought. After that conversation, I thought things might settle down. I thought my mom might reflect on what I said and realize how wrong she had been. But she didn't. She kept trying to justify her actions, kept calling and leaving messages. But I wasn't interested in hearing it anymore. I had finally realized that this wasn't about Claire's divorce, or even my baby shower. It was about the years of favoritism, manipulation, and neglect that I had endured from my mom and my sister. Then, something surprising happened. My dad, who had been completely unaware of the extent of the manipulation and drama between me and Claire, found out about everything. He found out about Claire's affair, the way my mom had handled the situation, and how my mom had canceled my baby shower without consulting me. He was furious. And when I told him about how my mom had been treating me all these years, he was even angrier. I think my dad had always known that there was something wrong in the family, but he didn't fully understand the extent of it until now. He had always been the one who supported me, who stood up for me when my mom wouldn't. But now, things were different. He had had enough. My dad and Matt sat down and talked about the whole situation, and it was clear to them that the only way to fix this was to make sure that I had the support I needed, even if that meant going against my mom. They decided to throw me a new baby shower, one that my mom and Claire would not be invited to. I was surprised, but also incredibly relieved. For the first time, I felt like I was being supported, truly supported by the people who mattered. The new baby shower was a huge success. My cousins and close family friends came together to make it one of the most memorable days of my life. Matt and my dad had helped organize everything, and they made sure it was everything I had wanted. The decorations were beautiful, the food was delicious, and the atmosphere was full of joy and love. I finally had the celebration I deserved, the one that was supposed to be mine all along. But while I was celebrating with the people who cared about me, my mom and Claire were left on the outside, watching from the sidelines. I didn't feel sorry for them. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I had finally taken control of my own life, my own happiness. It wasn't just about the baby shower. It was about reclaiming my sense of self, about standing up for myself when no one else would. Things with my mom didn't improve after that. She tried to reach out a few more times, sending me messages about how hurt she was, how this was all so painful for her. But she never apologized for her actions. She never once acknowledged how much she had hurt me. It was always about her, about what she wanted, and never about how her behavior had affected me. I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't keep letting her manipulate me, couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. And that's when I made the decision to cut her out of my life, at least for the time being. I needed space. I needed peace. I couldn't have her or Claire around me anymore, especially not with a baby on the way. It's hard to describe the emotions I've felt in the months since that chaotic day when my mom canceled my baby shower behind my back. A lot has happened, and things have continued to shift in ways I never could have predicted. My family, once a source of comfort and love, is now divided beyond repair, and as much as it hurts, I've come to terms with the fact that I can't fix it, at least not right now. My life has changed in so many ways since then. Most notably, I gave birth to my baby girl, and she's been the light of my life, my reason to keep going through all the ups and downs. Matt has been my constant support through everything. He's shown me what true partnership is, especially through all the family drama and heartache. He's been by my side, helping me heal, encouraging me to stand up for myself, and making sure I never feel alone. The birth of our daughter was, without a doubt, the happiest moment of my life. Holding her for the first time, feeling her tiny fingers wrap around mine, I couldn't help but cry tears of joy. In that moment, I realized that no matter what had happened with my family, I was going to do everything in my power to create a loving, supportive environment for her. I wasn't going to let the dysfunction and negativity that had surrounded me for years affect her. She deserved more than that. And then, things with my parents took another turn. My dad, who had been increasingly distant from my mom ever since the baby shower fiasco, finally made the decision to divorce her. This wasn't something I expected, but honestly, it didn't surprise me either. After everything that had happened, I think my dad finally realized that my mom had never truly put the family first. Her continued favoritism toward Claire and her inability to acknowledge how much she had hurt me had eroded any hope he had left for their marriage. It started when Claire came home drunk one evening after a date with her boss, the man she had been having an affair with. This wasn't the first time Claire had made questionable choices, but this was the moment that pushed my dad over the edge. He had always been the one to defend her, to try and protect her from herself. But this time, he was done. He asked her to leave the house. He told her that she needed to take responsibility for her actions, that she couldn't keep living off the support of our parents like she had always done. Claire was furious. Of course, she argued. She fought. But my dad stood firm. For the first time, he was finally taking control of his own life. But that wasn't the worst of it. After Claire left, she dropped a bombshell. She told my dad that he wasn't even her real father. I know that must have hurt him more than anything. He had always treated Claire like his own daughter. He had been there for her every step of the way, despite knowing that he wasn't her biological father. But to hear those words come out of her mouth, I can't imagine the pain he must have felt. Claire quickly realized what she had said and regretted it. But the damage was done. My dad demanded an explanation, but Claire wasn't ready to offer one. The truth came out soon after. Though, when my dad insisted on a paternity test, it turned out that Claire wasn't his biological daughter. My mom had known this for years. She had hidden the truth from him, claiming that they had tried for years to have a child together, but nothing had worked. The truth, though, was that my mom had had an affair. She had gotten pregnant by someone else, and my dad had been led to believe he was the father. When my dad found out, he was devastated. My mom tried to salvage the marriage, suggesting couples therapy, but my dad refused. The trust was gone, and he made it clear that he wanted a divorce. And so, it happened. The divorce was finalized soon after, and my dad was left to pick up the pieces of his broken heart. As for my mom, she was forced to sell the house to divide the property in two. My dad wasn't going to pay her anything because the infidelity had worked in his favor during the divorce proceedings. It was a harsh reality for my mom, who had never worked a day in her life and had relied heavily on my dad's support. Now, she and Claire were living together, surviving off the money from the house sale and Claire's salary. But I knew that wasn't going to last long. Claire had never been financially independent, and I doubted she would be able to support both of them for very long. It was hard to watch. My family was falling apart. and there was nothing I could do to fix it. The betrayal from my mom, the lies about Claire's paternity, the manipulation, and the years of favoritism, it all felt like a web of deceit that no one could untangle. And yet, despite everything that had happened, I still found myself questioning my role in all of this. Was I wrong to stand up for myself? Should I have tried harder to repair my relationship with my mom and Claire? But then I remembered how much they had hurt me. I remembered how they had consistently put Claire's needs above mine, and how my mom had ignored my pain for years. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. Now, I've cut off contact with my mom and Claire. I don't want my daughter to grow up around all this negativity. I don't want her to learn that it's okay to treat people the way my mom and sister treated me. I don't want her to be manipulated or made to feel inferior the way I was. It's not healthy. And it's not the kind of environment I want to create for her. Matt and I are doing well. We're focusing on our new life as parents and enjoying every moment we can together. He's been amazing through all of this. He's been a wonderful partner, and he's shown me that I don't need to rely on my family for love and support. We have each other, and that's enough. My relationship with my parents may be broken for now, and I may never have the family I always dreamed of, but I'm learning to create my own family, one based on love, respect, and support. I know it won't be easy, and I know there will be moments of doubt, but I'm stronger than I was before. I'm no longer the quiet, obedient daughter who just goes along with what everyone else wants. I've learned to stand up for myself, and I'll continue to do so. Not just for me, but for my daughter too. The journey isn't over, and maybe one day I'll be able to rebuild some of the relationships that were shattered. But for now, I'm focusing on what's truly important, my new family, my daughter, and the life I'm building with Matt. Everything else can wait.